I grew up in Ipoh. It's a very nice town. It's a retirement town, very quiet, lots of rivers, golf course, and good food, warm people. That's where I come from.
This is Sunny, an Imperial College student from Malaysia who has worked with palm oil. His hometown sits on the edge of the palm oil industry's reach.
Yeah, near my town, there's a lot of palm oil mills because palm oil is one of the very important trade in Malaysia because Malaysia relies on natural resources.
The environmental damage caused by the industry has caught the attention of many NGOs, but not all see palm oil as purely detrimental to developing countries. Julian Donald from Project African Wilderness explains the complexity of the problems with palm oil production in Africa and Southeast Asia.
Whilst it's well publicised that there are negative impacts with palm oil introduction, we can't neglect the fact that it's helped a lot of economies in the developing world to strengthen, particularly in Asian markets. In Africa, it's only really starting to kick off now. The government in Benin are starting their agriculture revival program and are using palm oil to strengthen their local economies. Of course, that attracts a lot of attention from environmental organisations such as Greenpeace, who do have a slant, and obviously they do a lot of good work, but they tend to neglect the fact that local populations are currently struggling to develop their economy and rely on crops such as palm oil to get that kick-started. Problems lie when governments don't control expansion and regulation of palm oil plantation, and these problems have been seen to detrimental effect in Borneo, where huge tracts of rainforest have been wiped out with no real regulation of how plantations are established and maintained.
But what exactly is the problem with forest clearing and the resulting habitat fragmentation? Dr. Rob Ewers from Imperial College London explains these concepts.
Well, tropical deforestation has a really big impact on the species which are out there, and the obvious thing is that it removes the habitat. And if you don't have the habitat, then you don't have the species. Fragmentation is a bit harder of a concept to understand. It's when pieces of forest get split off from each other and they get left behind as these small isolated sections of forest surrounded by agriculture. Now in that case it really impacts the ability of many species to survive, because species have to be able to move across a landscape to persist.
Problems increase after the deforestation and during the processing of the palms. As well as being a Malaysian, Sunny conducted an environmental audit of a palm oil mill to test the efficiency of the processes involved and measure the levels of pollution.
I actually went to a real palm oil factory, and what I did was to go through every process of the palm oil production. Like the goal of a palm oil factory is to recover crude palm oil and also the kernels. There are a lot of process involved, and the first impression is the factory is quite dirty. Over the course of palm oil production, we are mainly concerned of the air pollution, water pollution, and the noise pollution.
So is the industry being regulated and made more sustainable at all? Sunny explains that the industry are doing some good things.
I would say my purpose there in itself is a good thing, because the company has the initiative to conform to ISO 14001 standard. ISO 14001 is essentially an environmental management system standard, which is aimed at reducing the environmental footprint of the palm oil mill processing. And so the good things about the plant itself is that they are constantly trying to assess what investments are necessary to make the process more efficient.
But not everyone is convinced by these environmental standards. One of the latest standards and regulations is the Roundtable on Sustainable Palm Oil, or RSPO certification. This is a self-proclaimed seal of approval that produced palm oil is both sustainable and traceable. Rob Ewers casts a critical eye.
Having RSPO certification is certainly better than not having it. Whether it actually makes a huge difference on the ground, I don't know. I'm hopeful that it does, and I know RSPO is now in the process of trying to quantify whether or not their regulations and their certification process is having a beneficial impact. So they're going to be comparing the status of biodiversity, for example, on plantations that are and aren't certified, to actually see if it makes a difference. I hope it shows a positive benefit, but I'm not holding my breath.
And strange though it may seem, a counterintuitive solution to find a balance between the palm oil industry and habitat conservation has been set up by ROB, the Stability of Altered Ecosystems project.
So the whole thing is one big project, but there's something like 60 researchers from around the world involved in it now, so each of those has a slightly different thing that are interested in the project. But what we're doing is working with an oil palm company in Malaysia who has a legal and a permitted clearance of forest, converting it to oil palm. And we're working closely with them to take advantage of this clearance to set up a very large ecological experiment where we get to design the landscape. So we leave behind pieces of forest along rivers or different patches of different sizes in particular places. And then we get to follow what happens to that ecosystem through that conversion process.
But what about the conversion process on a social and personal level?
Well, as a Malaysian, I really feel that over the years there's been enormous development over the past 20 years, and I felt really sorry and for the environment, because most of the rivers that I used to go when I was young were polluted. In my heart, I really think that we have to respect the wildlife as well, because we share the world. I don't know, I'm not from the environmental policy.
And what would be your prediction for the future of the palm oil industry?
So the key point to take away is really to develop the business, but in a way which is sustainable to the environment, which is why I think the RSPO or environmental management systems such as the ISO 14001 are absolutely crucial to maintain a balance between its development and the ecosystem.